in the quiet suburbs of a small American town, where life seems simple but often holds unexpected twists, comes a story of two unlikely companions who find hope and purpose in one another. Meet Sarah Thompson, a retired nurse navigating the stillness of her golden years, and Max, a wounded retired K-9 officer with a scarred past. Together, their bond would not only heal their hearts but also inspire an entire community to believe in second chances. This is their story, told in 5 chapters, about love, resilience, and the incredible transformations that happen when we open our hearts. Sarah Thompson lived a quiet life in the small town of Cedar Ridge, North Carolina. Widowed for 5 years, she spent her days tending to her garden, reading mystery novels, and baking cookies for the neighborhood kids. Yet, as cheerful as her home appeared with its white picket fence and blooming roses, an emptiness lingered. The loss of her husband, Jack, had left a void no amount of baking or gardening could fill. One crisp autumn morning, Sarah received a call from her friend Rebecca, who volunteered at the Cedar Ridge Animal Shelter. "Sarah, I think you should come down to the shelter," Rebecca said. "We have a dog here that might need someone like you." "I don't know, Rebecca," Sarah replied hesitantly. "I'm not sure I'm ready for a dog." "And what kind of dog are we talking about?" "Max is a retired K-9 officer," Rebecca explained. "He was injured in the line of duty and hasn't been the same since. He's a bit of a challenge, but I think you might be exactly what he needs." Intrigued but uncertain, Sarah decided to visit the shelter. The thought of helping a dog that had spent its life protecting others resonated with her years as a nurse. When Sarah arrived at the shelter, Rebecca led her to Max's kennel. There, she found a large German shepherd lying quietly in the corner. His coat was rugged and streaked with gray. His leg bore scars from surgeries, and his once bright amber eyes seemed distant. He looked like a warrior who had given up. "Poor boy," Sarah whispered. She knelt down, ignoring the ache in her knees. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Max's ears twitched at her soft voice. Slowly, he lifted his head and studied her with cautious curiosity. Rebecca and the shelter staff watched in amazement as Max, who had avoided human contact for weeks, took a tentative step towards Sarah. "Does he have a name?" Sarah asked. "Max," Rebecca replied. "He served 8 years in the police force. But after an ambush during a drug raid, he was badly injured. He saved his handler's life. But the trauma, physical and emotional, has been hard on him." Sarah felt a pang of recognition. She had seen that hollow look in patients who had endured loss and pain. It mirrored the emptiness she often saw in herself. Without hesitation, she stood and asked, "How much is the adoption fee?" Rebecca hesitated. "Sarah, Max needs a lot of care, physical therapy, medication, patience. Are you sure about this?" Sarah's voice was firm. "I was a nurse for over 40 years. I've helped people recover from far worse. This dog doesn't just need care. He needs a home. And maybe, so do I." By the end of the day, Max was riding in the passenger seat of Sarah's car, his head resting against the window as if he were contemplating the next chapter of his life. Sarah, too, wondered what lay ahead, but for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of excitement. As they pulled into her driveway, Sarah turned to Max. "Welcome home, Max. Let's figure this out together." The first few days with Max were not easy for Sarah. Despite her best intentions, It was clear that Max was not yet ready to trust her completely. He wandered through her house with a cautious, methodical precision, his police training evident in the way he checked each room before settling down. His limp was pronounced, and he flinched at sudden movements or loud noises. Sarah had prepared a cozy corner for Max in her living room, complete with a plush dog bed and a few toys she had picked up at the local pet store. But Max largely ignored them, preferring to lie near the door, as if waiting for someone to come back for him. "You're not just waiting for someone, are you?" Sarah said softly one evening as she sat nearby, knitting. "You're waiting for something, your purpose." Sarah understood that feeling all too well. After her husband Jack passed, she had felt like a ship adrift, unsure of her direction or purpose. Perhaps she and Max were more alike than she realized. Determined to help Max adjust, Sarah drew on her years of experience as a nurse. She knew that routine was crucial for recovery, so she established a schedule. Mornings began with short walks around her quiet neighborhood. At first, Max limped heavily, his steps slow and hesitant. But Sarah encouraged him with gentle words. "You're doing great, Max," she said as they paused under an old oak tree. "One step at a time. That's all we need." After their walks, Sarah would guide Max through simple exercises to strengthen his injured leg. With a bag of treats and a soft voice, she coaxed him into stretches and small movements. Though Max was reluctant at first, his tail began to wag faintly whenever Sarah praised him. Meals became a bonding ritual. Sarah discovered that Max loved chicken and rice, so she started cooking it for him, adding supplements recommended by her veterinarian. Each meal was served with a side of encouragement. "You're a good boy, Max," she said as he devoured his food. "Strong and brave, even if you don't see it yet." One rainy afternoon, Sarah was reading in her armchair while Max lay near the door. As usual, a crack of thunder startled both of them. Max let out a low whimper, his body trembling. Sarah set her book down and knelt beside him, her arthritic knees protesting. "It's okay, Max," she said, stroking his fur. "I've got you." She stayed with him until the storm passed, her hand never leaving his back. For the first time, Max leaned into her touch, his body relaxing. It was a small but significant moment, a flicker of trust. Encouraged, Sarah began to share more of herself with Max. She told him stories about her life with Jack, about the patients she had cared for, and even about her own struggles with loneliness. "You know," she said one evening, "I think we both needed saving, Max. Maybe that's why we found each other." Max responded with a soft huff, his amber eyes meeting hers briefly before he laid his head on her lap. Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. For the first time, it felt like Max was truly with her, not just in her home, but in her life. Not everyone in Cedar Ridge welcomed Max with open arms. A few neighbors expressed concern about having a former police dog in the area, especially one with a history of trauma. The most vocal was Mr. Hargrove, who lived 2 doors down. "That dog's dangerous," he muttered one morning as Sarah and Max passed by during their walk. "Shouldn't be around people." Sarah bit her tongue, focusing instead on Max. She knew that rebuilding his reputation, and his confidence, would take time. She resolved to let Max's actions speak for themselves. Despite the skepticism, Max began to find small ways to integrate into Sarah's world. He wagged his tail at Mrs. Parker, the elderly neighbor who brought Sarah baked goods. He sniffed curiously at the children who played hopscotch on the sidewalk. Though he kept a cautious distance, each small step forward felt like a victory. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah began to see glimpses of the dog Max once was. His tail wagged more often, his eyes shone brighter, and his limp, though still present, became less pronounced. He even started exploring the garden, chasing butterflies with an almost puppy-like enthusiasm. One afternoon, while Sarah tended to her flowers, she heard Max bark, a strong, commanding sound. She turned to see him standing alert near the gate, his ears perked and his tail wagging. A delivery man was approaching, and Max's protective instincts had kicked in. But instead of growling or retreating, Max waited calmly as Sarah greeted the man. "Good boy, Max," she said, scratching behind his ears. "You're starting to remember who you are, aren't you?" For the first time in years, Sarah felt a spark of hope, not just for Max, but for herself. Together, they were building something new, something stronger than the pain and loss they had both endured. It was a chilly November evening, and Cedar Ridge was cloaked in a quiet stillness. Sarah sat in her armchair, knitting a scarf for the upcoming holidays. The warmth of the fireplace cast a golden glow across the living room, where Max lay at her feet, dozing lightly. His ears twitched now and then, always alert even in sleep. Outside, the wind rustled through the bare branches, carrying the faint scent of winter. Sarah glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. She yawned, setting her knitting aside and reaching for her blanket. "Bedtime, Max," she said softly, though she knew he'd likely do one last check of the house before settling in. As she stood to turn off the lights, a faint sound stopped her in her tracks, a metallic scrape at the back door. At first, she thought it might be the wind, but then she heard it again, more deliberate this time. Her heart skipped a beat. Max was on his feet instantly. His ears were pricked, his body tense. A low growl rumbled in his throat, a sound Sarah had never heard before. "Max," she whispered, her voice trembling. The German shepherd moved toward the kitchen with a deliberate calmness, his injured leg barely slowing him down. Sarah followed cautiously, her pulse racing. When she peeked around the corner, she saw the back door handle turning slowly. Her breath caught. Someone was trying to break in. Before Sarah could react, the door creaked open, and two shadowy figures slipped inside. One held a flashlight, its beam sweeping across the kitchen. The other carried a crowbar. "Old lady probably keeps cash around," one of them muttered. Sarah's mind raced. Her phone was in the living room, too far to reach without being noticed. She felt a wave of fear but then glanced at Max, who stood firm between her and the intruders, his stance protective and unyielding. The man with the flashlight turned toward Max, the beam landing on his scarred face and imposing frame. "Wait," the man hissed. "That's a police dog." The second intruder paused, his grip tightening on the crowbar. "What's he doing here?" Max didn't wait for an answer. With a sharp, commanding bark, he charged forward, his injured leg seemingly forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. The first man stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. The second swung the crowbar, but Max dodged, his movements precise and calculated. Sarah's fear turned to awe. She had never seen Max like this, a warrior, a protector, reclaiming his strength and purpose. The chaos in the kitchen woke the neighborhood. Lights flickered on in nearby houses, and Sarah could hear voices and footsteps outside. She grabbed a heavy pan from the counter, ready to defend herself if necessary. But Max was already in control of the situation. The first intruder tried to run, but Max lunged, blocking his path with a fierce growl. The second man, now panicking, swung the crowbar wildly, but Max disarmed him with a quick, calculated move, knocking the tool to the ground. "Police dog, let's get out of here," one of them yelled. But it was too late. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Max herded the intruders toward the front of the house, where a small crowd of neighbors had gathered. One of them, Mr. Hargrove, the same man who had once doubted Max, was on the phone with the police. The men made a desperate attempt to flee, but Max held his ground, his commanding presence keeping them cornered until the officers arrived. When the police pulled up, the first officer out of the car was Officer Daniels, Max's former handler. He froze when he saw the familiar German shepherd standing guard over the intruders. "Max," Daniels said, his voice filled with disbelief and pride. Max's ears twitched at the sound of his name, but he didn't move until the officers cuffed the intruders and secured the scene. Only then did he return to Sarah's side, his tail wagging slightly as if to ask, "Did I do well?" Sarah dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around Max despite her aching joints. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You're my hero, Max, my brave boy." The officers took statements from Sarah and the neighbors, praising Max for his bravery. News of the incident spread quickly through Cedar Ridge, and by morning, headlines were buzzing. Retired K-9 officer saves widow during home invasion. The break-in didn't just solidify Max's place in Sarah's life, it changed the way the entire community saw him. Mr. Hargrove, once skeptical, now crossed the street to shake Sarah's hand and offer Max a treat. "I was wrong about him," he admitted. "That dog's a hero." Max's actions also brought the neighborhood closer together. Residents started organizing watch groups and offering to help Sarah with her errands, ensuring she never felt alone. That night, as Sarah sat by the fire with Max at her feet, she reflected on everything that had happened. The fear, the chaos, the courage Max had shown. It all felt like a turning point. Not just for Max but for her as well. "You were amazing, Max," she said, scratching behind his ears. "I always knew you had it in you." Max huffed contentedly, his head resting on her lap. For the first time since Jack's passing, Sarah felt truly safe, not just because of Max's protection, but because of the bond they had forged. As the fire crackled and the house settled into quiet, Sarah whispered, "We're a team now, Max. Nothing can break us." News of Max's heroics spread far beyond Cedar Ridge. Local newspapers, television stations, and even social media platforms picked up the story. "Retired K-9 officer saves elderly woman during home invasion" became a viral headline. And Sarah's quiet life was suddenly in the spotlight. It wasn't just the bravery of the retired K-9 officer that captured hearts, it was the bond between Sarah and Max. Their story resonated with people from all walks of life, inspiring others to see the potential in second chances and the transformative power of love and trust. A week after the incident, Sarah received a call from the Cedar Ridge Police Department. They wanted to hold a special ceremony to honor Max. Officer Daniels, Max's former handler, explained the department's plans. Max deserves recognition, Daniels said. He may be retired, but he hasn't forgotten his duty. We want to present him with a medal for civilian bravery. Sarah's heart swelled with pride. He'll be there, she replied. This means so much to both of us. The ceremony was held at the Cedar Ridge Community Center. The room was filled with police officers, local officials, and residents eager to celebrate their new hometown hero. Max, freshly groomed, wore a blue bandana embroidered with the words "Hero Dog" around his neck. When the police chief called Sarah and Max to the stage, the room erupted in applause. Sarah held Max's leash as they walked together, her hand trembling slightly, not from nerves but from overwhelming pride. Today, we recognize a true hero, the police chief began. Max's actions saved not only his owner but also his entire community from potential harm. His bravery reminds us all of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. The chief placed a shiny medal on Max's bandana, and the room cheered. Sarah knelt beside Max, her hand resting gently on his head. "You've made me so proud," she whispered. Max wagged his tail, his amber eyes bright with joy. The ceremony marked a turning point for Sarah. She realized that Max's story had the power to inspire real change, not just in Cedar Ridge but beyond. She began speaking at local events, sharing their journey and advocating for programs that help retired working dogs find loving homes. One of Sarah's first public talks was at a fundraiser for the Second Chance K-9 initiative, a program designed to support the adoption and care of retired service dogs. She stood in front of a crowd of hundreds, Max sitting faithfully by her side. Max wasn't just a rescue, Sarah said, her voice steady and clear. He saved me as much as I saved him. Every dog, no matter their age or scars, deserves a chance to heal, to find love, and to live a full life. Max is living proof of that. Her words moved the audience to tears. Donations poured in, and the initiative quickly gained momentum, helping countless retired service dogs find homes. Inspired by the positive impact Max had on her own life, Sarah began volunteering with him at the Cedar Ridge Children's Hospital. His gentle demeanor and wise, soulful eyes had a calming effect on the young patients, many of whom were facing their own physical and emotional challenges. One little boy, Ethan, had been injured in a car accident and was struggling to walk again. When Max approached him, Ethan hesitated at first but eventually reached out to stroke his fur. "He's hurt too," Ethan said, pointing to Max's limp. "But he's still strong." Sarah knelt beside them. "That's right. Max had to work hard to get better. Just like you. And look at him now. He's a hero. You can be one too." From that day on, Ethan insisted on practicing his therapy exercises with Max by his side. Slowly but surely, the boy began to regain his confidence and strength. Max became a regular visitor at the hospital, bringing joy and comfort to patients and staff alike. His scarred leg and calm presence served as a symbol of resilience and hope. Back in Cedar Ridge, Max's story continued to inspire change. The neighborhood came together in ways Sarah had never imagined. Mr. Hargrove, who had once been skeptical of Max, became one of their biggest supporters. He even organized a community dog parade to celebrate Max and other local rescue dogs. "Max taught me something," Mr. Hargrove admitted to Sarah during the event. "Sometimes we just need to give others Dogs or people, a little grace and a second chance. Sarah smiled. That's a lesson I think we all need to remember. The Cedar Ridge Police Department announced the creation of a new program, the Max Initiative. Modeled after Sarah and Max's story, the program provided funding for the adoption and care of retired K-9 officers. It also partnered with local shelters to connect senior dogs with elderly residents, offering them companionship and a renewed sense of purpose. Sarah was invited to serve as an honorary advisor, and she gladly accepted. She worked closely with Officer Daniels to develop training materials and outreach events. Max, of course, became the program's official ambassador, his face gracing flyers and billboards across the state. One evening, as Sarah and Max sat in their garden watching the sunset, she turned to him and said, "You've changed so many lives, Max. Not just mine, but an entire community, and beyond." Max rested his head on her lap, his tail wagging softly. Sarah smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. They were no longer just a widow and a retired K-9 officer, they were a team. A symbol of hope, and a reminder that second chances could transform the world. As time passed, Sarah and Max's story continued to grow beyond Cedar Ridge. Their bond, built on trust and resilience, became a symbol of hope and transformation, touching countless lives far beyond their small town. Yet, even as their story gained national recognition, Sarah and Max remained rooted in the simple joys of their life together. One crisp spring morning, Sarah received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was an invitation from a national animal welfare organization to attend their annual gala in Washington, D.C. They wanted to honor Max with a Lifetime Achievement Award for his service and the positive impact of his story. The event was a whirlwind. Sarah, who had rarely left Cedar Ridge, found herself standing on a grand stage in front of hundreds of people, with Max by her side. As the host recounted Max's bravery during the home invasion and his work as a therapy dog, Sarah couldn't help but tear up. Max reminds us, the host concluded, that every scar tells a story, not of weakness, but of survival and strength. When Sarah stepped up to the microphone, she spoke from the heart. Max didn't just save me that night, he saved me every day since. He taught me that no matter how broken we feel, there's always a way to heal, with patience, love, and purpose. I hope his story inspires everyone here to believe in second chances. For animals and people alike. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, and Max, as if sensing the moment, wagged his tail and gave a joyful bark, earning a wave of laughter and applause. Inspired by Sarah's speech, the National Animal Welfare Organization partnered with the Max Initiative to launch a nationwide program, expanding the senior-to-senior adoption model to cities across the United States. The program connected retired service dogs and shelter animals with elderly individuals, creating bonds that brought joy, purpose, and healing to both. Requests for Sarah to speak began pouring in from across the country. While she accepted a few, Sarah always insisted that the focus remain on the animals and the lives they changed. One of the most touching moments came when a woman named Ellen approached Sarah after an event in Boston. Ellen shared that she had adopted a senior dog through the program, a timid Labrador mix named Daisy, and that the dog had helped her overcome the grief of losing her husband. "Your story gave me the courage to try," Ellen said, tears in her eyes. "Daisy saved me, Just like Max saved you. Sarah hugged Ellen tightly. That's what it's all about, she replied, giving each other the chance to heal. As the years passed, Max began to slow down. His muzzle turned completely white, and his morning patrols of the house became shorter and more deliberate. Yet, his spirit remained unshaken, and his devotion to Sarah never wavered. One day, a new family moved into the house across the street. They had 2 young children and a nervous rescue dog named Luna, who barked at every sound. Sarah watched as Max approached Luna with calm, confident energy. Over time, Luna began to mimic his behavior, becoming less anxious and more playful. Max had quietly taken on a new role, mentor. Whether it was helping younger dogs or comforting neighborhood children, he seemed to understand that his purpose was far from over. On the 5th anniversary of the night Max saved Sarah, the town of Cedar Ridge held a special celebration in their honor. The event took place in the newly renamed Max Memorial Park, a green space dedicated to retired service animals and their adoptive families. The park featured walking trails, a dog-friendly garden, and a mural depicting Max in both his K-9 uniform and his later years as a therapy dog. At the center stood a bronze statue of Max, his proud stance capturing the essence of his courage and gentleness. Sarah spoke at the dedication ceremony, her voice strong despite the emotion that welled up inside her. "This park isn't just a tribute to Max," she said. "It's a tribute to the love and strength we all carry within us, the kind that allows us to heal, to protect, and to transform the lives around us. Max showed me that even in our twilight years, we can still make a difference. That's the legacy I hope we leave behind." As the crowd applauded, Sarah looked down at Max, who was lying beside her with his head resting on her foot. His tail wagged softly, as if to say, "We did it." In the following months, Sarah began writing a memoir about her journey with Max, titled Second Chances: The Story of a Widow and Her Hero Dog. The book became a bestseller, with proceeds benefiting the Max Initiative. Letters poured in from readers who shared how the story had inspired them to adopt senior animals or reconnect with loved ones. Max, now well into his twilight years, continued to be Sarah's constant companion. Every evening, they sat together in the garden, watching the sun set over Cedar Ridge. "You know, Max," Sarah said one evening, her voice soft, "I used to think life ended when Jack passed. But you showed me that every ending is just the beginning of something new." Max pressed his head into her lap, his amber eyes filled with the same devotion they had held since that first day at the shelter. When Max eventually passed peacefully in his sleep, Cedar Ridge mourned the loss of their beloved hero. The community rallied around Sarah, offering comfort and sharing stories of how Max had touched their lives. To honor him, the Max Initiative expanded internationally, helping senior dogs and elderly individuals around the world find new beginnings. Cedar Ridge held an annual Max Day, where families celebrated the bond between people and their pets. Sarah, though deeply missing her companion, found solace in the garden she had built with Max by her side. She continued her work with the initiative, sharing their story and ensuring that Max's legacy would live on. On quiet evenings, Sarah often sat in the garden, gazing at the stars. She thought of Jack, Max, and all the lives they had touched together. "Thank you, Max," she whispered, "for everything." And in her heart, she felt the warmth of his presence, eternal, unyielding. and filled with love. Thus ends the story of Sarah and Max, a testament to the power of second chances, the courage to love again, and the enduring legacy of a bond that transformed not just their lives but the world around them. As we close the chapter on Sarah and Max's incredible journey, we're reminded of the power of resilience, love, and second chances. Their story wasn't just about overcoming personal challenges, it was a testament to the strength we all possess to make a difference in the lives of others. No matter our age, background, or circumstances, Max's legacy teaches us that scars, whether physical or emotional, don't define us. Instead, they are proof of the battles we've fought and the strength we've gained. Sarah showed us that it's never too late to find purpose and love again. Together, they proved that when we open our hearts, we create ripples of hope that can transform not only our own lives but also the world around us. In today's fast-paced and often disconnected world, stories like Sarah and Max's remind us of the importance of empathy, patience, and kindness. Here are 3 lessons we can all take from their journey. Value second chances, whether it's offering a home to a senior dog, mending a broken relationship, or starting anew in your own life. Remember that it's never too late to make a fresh start. Build connections, in a world where technology often takes center stage. Don't forget to nurture real, meaningful relationships with your family, friends, and even animals. These connections are what ground us and give life its deepest joys. Leave a legacy of love, like Max and Sarah. Strive to leave the world a little better than you found it. Small acts of kindness can create a ripple effect, inspiring others to do the same. If you've been moved by Sarah and Max's story, don't miss out on the many other tales of courage, love, and transformation that we share on this channel. By subscribing, you'll be the first to hear heartwarming stories that remind us all of the good in the world. Right finger hit the subscribe button now and turn on notifications so you'll never miss a new story. It's free, and it's our way of spreading inspiration to people around the globe. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue bringing these incredible stories to life. Together, let's celebrate the beauty of second chances and the power of love. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Pour sparkling heart.